Iron on the shoreline, like ships burning cold, ruins cut in my collarbone, future in the smoke I hold, salt wind bitter as a warning, red sky wired with rage, we launch like broken arrows, hungry for another raid. I am the storm they sail into, breathing clean, breaking through.
Okay. But none of this shakes or even threatens the philosophy of Thelema. On the contrary, it may be called the rock of its foundation. For the issue of all is evidently that all conceptions are necessarily unique because there can never be two identical points of view. And this corresponds with facts, for there are points of view close kin, and thus there may be a superficial general agreement, as there is which is found to be false on analysis, as has been shown. From the above, it will be understood how it comes that there are no trances of knowledge, and this bids us inquire into the tradition of the grimoires, that all knowledge is miraculously attainable. The answer is that, while all trances are destroyers of knowledge, since for one thing they all destroy the sense of duality, they yet put into their adept the means of knowledge. We may regard rational apprehension as a projection of truth in dualistic form, so that he who possesses any given truth has only to symbolize it. In terms of the intellect, to obtain its image in the form of knowledge, this conception is difficult. An illustration may clear its view. An architect can indicate the general characteristics of a building on paper by means of two drawings, a ground plan and an elevation. Neither but is false in nearly every respect. Each is partial, each lacks depth, and so on. And yet, in combination, they do represent to the trained imagination what the building actually is. Also, illusions, as they are. No other illusions will serve the mind to discover the truth which they intend. This is the reality, hidden in all the illusions of the intellect. And this is the basis of the necessity for the aspirant of having his knowledge accurate and adequate. The common mystic affects to despise science as illusion. This is the most fatal of all errors. For the instruments with which he works are all of this very order of illusory things. We know that lenses distort images, but for all that, we can acquire information about distant objects which proves correct when the lens is constructed according to certain illusory principles, and not by arbitrary caprice. The mystic of this kind is generally recognized by men as a proud fool. He knows the fact and is hardened in his presumption and arrogance. One finds him goaded by his subconscious shame to active attacks on science. He gloats upon the apparent errors of calculation which constantly occur, not at all understanding the self-imposed limitations of validity of statement which are always implied. In short, he comes at last to abandon his own postulates and takes refuge in the hermit crab carapace of the theologian. But on the other hand, to him who has firmly founded his rational thinking on sound principles, who has acquired deep comprehension of one fundamental science, and made proper paths between it and its germans, which he understands only in general, who has finally secured the whole of this structure by penetrating through the appropriate trances to the neshamic truths of which it is the rightly ordered projection in the ruach. To him the field of knowledge, thus well plowed, well sown, well fertilized, well left to ripen, is ready for him to reap. The man who truly understands the underlying formulae of one root subject can easily extend his apprehension to the boughs, leaves, flowers, and fruit. And it is in this sense that the medieval masters of magic were justified in claiming that by the evocation of a given daemon, the worthy Octinomos might acquire the perfect knowledge of all sciences, speak with all tongues, command the love of all, or otherwise deal with all nature as from the standpoint of its maker. Crude are those credulous or critical who thought of the evocation as the work of an hour or a week, and the gain thereof to the adept, not the pure gold, certes, not the stone of the philosophers, but ye, yet a very virtuous weapon of much use on the way, also a mighty comfort to the human side of him, for the sweet fruit that hangs upon the tree that makes men gods is just this sunripe, soft bloom veiled globe of knowledge. Understanding the nature of knowledge, the culmination and stasis of the intellectual faculties, has been discussed in the previous essay. It implies a contradiction in terms. Understanding is the resolution of this antinomy. It is the chief quality of neshama, the intelligence, an idea insusceptible of true definition because supra-rational and only appreciable by direct experience. One can say at most that it is independent of any of the normal modes of motion of the mind. It is a significant illustration of the truth of this Kabbalistic theory, that women often possess most excellent intelligence, while totally incapable of the knowledge and reason on which logically it is founded. Samadhi, at first onset productive of bewildering ecstasy, ultimates in this understanding. One may say, therefore, that understanding implies a certain somatic quality of apprehension. Duality is perhaps not absolutely abolished, save in the superstructure of the state, but it assumes a form which would be absurd to call dualistic. It will be noticed that violation of logic is essential to every true effort to convey the conception. This fact lies at the root of all Trinitarian symbolism. The scheme is geometrical in idea. and even arithmetical, is shown by the attribution of bina to the number 3. But the solution of every dyad in a triune triad is misleading, insofar as it purports to interpret the phenomenon in terms of intellect, and only useful as it may train the reasoning faculties to supersede themselves in a sublime suicide upon the altar of the mystic intuition. Though this, after all, is a mean imitation of the proper process, for it is firstly unscientific in method, and secondly illegitimate in its denial of its own validity. The only correct and adequate mode of the attainment of understanding is to shut off and inhibit the rational mind altogether, thus leaving a tabula rasa upon which the entirely alien faculty de novo and sui generis can write its first word. But then it will surely be said, what is more unintelligent than this supposed intelligence, than this formless, even delirious ecstasy which sweeps away all shapes of thought? No sane man would deny this premise. But the explanation is that this ecstasy is, so to say, the throe of birth of the new faculty. It is surely natural for an observer to be startled, for the moment, by the discovery of a new universe. Ananda must be mastered manfully, not indulged as a vice in the manner of the mystic. Samadhi must be clarified by sila, by the stern virtue of constraint. And then appears the paradox that the new law of the mind has come not to destroy but to fulfill. The understanding takes full cognizance of all that vast material which the reason was unable to build into any coherent structure. The contradictions have disappeared by absorption. They have been accepted as essential factors in the nature of truth, which without them were a mere congeries of facts. It will be clear from all these considerations that there need be no surprise at this primordial paradox, that skepticism, absolute in every dimension, is the sole possible basis of true attainment. All attempts to shirk the issue by appeals to faith, by mystic transcendental sophistries, or any other spiritual varieties of the 3-card trick, are devoted to the most abject distraction. One cannot find the lady by any other way than that of the knight errant, of the great fool, the way of the eagle in the air, whose sacred number is the sacred 0. Yea, also, not being all and all being pan. The only due address to Godhead is in the dual form. For all must be destroyed, that all may be begotten. Chastity. Those works of ancient and medieval literature which more particularly concern the seeker after truth, concur on one point. The most worthless grimoires of black magic, no less than the highest philosophical flights of the Brotherhood, which we name not, insist upon the virtue of chastity as cardinal to the gate of wisdom. But first we noted this word virtue, the quality of manhood integral with virility, chastity of the adept of the Rose and Cross, or of the Grand Knights of Montsalvat, is not other than very opposite to that of which the poet can write. Chastity, that slavering sates his lust without the walls, muse and is gone, preening himself that his lewd lips relent, or to that emasculate frigga of Alfred Tennyson in the academic schools. The chastity whose magical energy both protects and urges the aspirant to the sacred mysteries is quite contrary in its deepest nature to all vulgar ideas of it. For it is, in the first place, a positive passion, in the second, connected only by obscure magical links with the sexual function, and in the third, the deadliest enemy of every form of bourgeois morality and sentiment. It may assist us to create in our minds a clear concept of this noblest and rarest yet most necessary of the virtues, if we draw the distinction between it and one of its ingredients, purity. Purity is a passive, or at least static quality. It connotes the absence of all alien admixture from any given idea as pure gallium, pure mathematics, pure race. It is a secondary and derived use of the word which we find in such expressions as pure milk, which imply freedom from contamination. Chastity, per contra, is the etymology castus, possibly connected with castrum, a fortified camp. Subnote. The root cas means house, and then house is Beth, the letter of Mercury, the magus of the terror. He is not still in a place of repose, but the quintessence of all motion. He is the Logos, and he is phallic. His doctrine is of the utmost Kabbalistic importance. Chastity, per contra, as the etymology castus, possibly connected with castrum, a fortified camp, suggests that may be supposed to assert the moral attitude of readiness to resist any assault upon an existing state of purity. So dear to heaven is saintly chastity, that when a soul is found sincerely so, 1,000 liveried angels lack it, sang Milton, with the true poet's veil-piercing sword vision. For service is but waste unless action demands it. The Sphinx is not to be mastered by holding aloof, and the brutish innocence of paradise is always at the mercy of the serpent. It is his wisdom that should guard our ways. We need his swiftness, subtlety, and his royal prerogative of dealing death. The innocence of the adept. We are at once reminded of the strong innocence of Hippocrates and his energy of silence. The chaste man is thus not merely one who avoids the contagion of impure thoughts, and the results but whose virility is competent to restore perfection to the world about him. Thus, the parsifal who flees from Kundry and her attendant flower witches loses his way and must wander long years in the desert. He is not truly chaste until he is able to redeem her, an act which he performs by the reunion of the lance and the sangre. Chastity may thus be defined as the strict observance of the magical oath, that is, in the light of the law of Thelema. Absolute and perfected devotion to the holy guardian angel and the exclusive pursuit of the way of the true will. It is entirely incompatible with the cowardice moral attitude, emasculation of soul and stagnation of action, which commonly denote the man called chaste by the vulgar. Beware of abstinence from action. Is it not written in our lection? For the nature of the universe being creative energy, Orteus blasphemes the goddess and seeks to introduce the elements of a real death within the pulses of life. The chaste man, the true knight-errant of the stars, imposes continually his essential virility upon the throbbing womb of the king's daughter. With every stroke of his spear, he penetrates the heart of holiness and bids spring forth a fountain of the sacred blood, splashing its scarlet dew throughout space and time. His innocence melts with its white-hot energy. The felon fetters of that restriction which is sin, and his integrity, with its fury of righteousness, establishes that justice which alone can satisfy the yearning lust of the womanhood, whose name is opportunity, is the function of the castrum or castellum, is not merely to resist a siege, but to compel the obedience of law and order. Every pagan within range of its riders, so also it is the way of chastity to do more than defend its purity against assault. For he is not wholly pure who is imperfect. Perfect is no man in himself without his fulfillment in all possibility. Thus then must he be instant to seek all proper adventure, and achieve it, seeing well to it, that by no means should such distract him or divert his purpose, polluting his true nature and hamstringing his true will. Woe! Woe, therefore, to him, the unchaste, who shirks scornful the seeming trivial, or flees fearful the desperate adventure, Woe, thrice woe, and 4 times woe be to him who is lured by the adventure, slacking his will, and demitted from his way. For as the laggard and the dastard are lost, so is the toy of circumstance dragged down to nethermost hell. Sir Knight, be vigilant. Watch by your arms and renew your oath. The days of sinister augury and deadly charged with danger which ye feel not, to overflowing with gay deeds and bold, masterful, of manful chastity.
A man wants an abortion or not, she's allowed to get one if it's illegal in that state. If it's legal in that state, she can get rid of the baby. So the fact that a man doesn't even have a say so whether he can keep the child or not keep the child anyway, he don't have a say so either way.
That was my agreement.
I agree with you on that.
Nations
but
have different judgments.
I mean, if you brought a kid into this world and you ain't even got the money for an abortion, you ain't got the money for this, that, and the third, you doing all of that, having children, bro, that child is your fault. You know what I mean?
I wanted to answer his question. Now I need to hear his question to truly. What was the
Gentiles, right?
Yeah, I'm saying generals, Gentiles are goats.
Take the deepest breath of the day. Hold for 10 seconds, 10, not 11, 10, not 9. Hold. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. Take the deepest breath of the day. Hold for 10 seconds, 10, not 11, 10, not 9. Hold.